Is fear stopping you from really living out your dreams? Like, be truthful with yourself. You can also often say it's like circumstances, or I've got to finish this, or this has to happen before I can ever do what I really want. Those are just reasons we put in the middle of ourselves and that dream we actually want, right? So fear is one of those things that is just a response. It's an emotional response to a thought. And as soon as we realize how flimsy it is, the sooner we can actually get going on what it is that we want. So some aspects of fear I understand because, we all feel it. But there's some that just don't make sense. So when somebody says, I don't want to follow my dream because I'm scared. And that was the number one reason once I had, put out a post, and that's what I asked people. And that's the answer that came back every single time in one form or another, whether they use the word directly, which often they did, or whether they used it in some other way. And if you are right now feeling scared about creating the kind of life you really want, then I invite you to consider it in a new way. So what if fear is just your response to the thought? It's an emotional response to the thought, right? So if somebody said to me, for example, let's go jump out of a plane and, try parachuting. I don't know. I'm sure I'm sure that I'm going to have some fear around that initially, right? And if I actually were to choose it, probably the moment before I jump, I would have some fear, right? So it's a natural response. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't do something. Now, personally, I don't have a desire to jump out of a plane any day soon, right? I think there was a time I might have been into it, but not now. But my point is that it doesn't have to stop us. There's lots of things we can have fear about that we still do anyway, right? They just happen. Or we choose them. We choose them in spite of the fear. And so I want to invite you to consider that. What are you stopping yourself from doing that you could do anyway, right? There's that famous book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I really love it. It's an older book, but there's so many golden nuggets in it. So if you haven't read it, I encourage you to do so. But I remember reading that, when I was younger, and it really inspired me, and partially because it was actually talking about the topic in a fairly light way. It wasn't serious. It wasn't, sitting there asking you to heal any wounds around fear. It was just like, just do it anyway, right? And it was giving lots of wonderful examples of people who did and the kind of results they had. Now, if I stopped because of fear, half my life wouldn't have been lived. I can tell you that, right? And that's a half that I actually especially love. And so knowing that fear is just a response to a thought means that you can change the thought. And then guess what? The response could change as well, very naturally, without you having to do anything about it, right? So when we're in fear, we're focusing on the worst case scenario usually, or we're focusing on the discomfort of something, right? So something simple like, creating your YouTube channel, if that's what's really on your mind right now, like how am I going to do it? When am I going to do it? I have to get on it and all this kind of force. Well, there is only one way. You start it. You name it, you get on YouTube, you create the channel, and then you do a video. And you can make the decision that whether I like it or not, whether it looks fantastic or not, I'm going to put it out anyway. And through that, you can just get into momentum, right? It'll just keep going because you decide to keep going, right? Moving into a new level of your business, same thing, right? When we are working at a certain level and we're like, I'd really like to get to this next stage, we're going to have to show up differently. We're going to have to act differently, make new decisions, probably know different kinds of people. And so initially, again, that can feel like we can see all the limitations of how am I going to do this? What's it going to take? It's so easy right now. I feel comfortable. I feel very familiar with the people that I currently am serving. And so that comfort zone can be a choice we make because we are momentarily experiencing a feeling of fear when we think about what else we could be doing and what it's going to require. Instead of thinking, what is the result that I could be experiencing? Let's fast forward to, months from now or a couple of years from now. What will that choice have given me that I won't receive by not accepting it? Right? Because everything grows with a single step, right? That's where it all starts. So whatever it is right now that you're thinking it's too much, what is one small action you can take towards it? And instead of giving yourself any time to sit there and assess it, to get comfortable, just take that step. Just take that one step, and tomorrow take the next little step in relationship to it. And see how far you get. You might find that the momentum has just simply grown on its own, and now you actually get excited about it, right? I've had that happen lots of times. And other times it might be like, wow, it actually just warmed you up for something else that was actually more true for you. But you wouldn't know that if you hadn't actually taken those steps in the first place. So fear is temporary, often illusory, right? Often it's just a response to certain thoughts. And if you think about different things, guess what? You don't feel the fear anymore, right? You think about the benefits, you think about the advantages, you think about the opportunities and the possibilities, right? Anyone that you currently admire, that you're watching or reading about or hearing about, they started at, step 0 as well. But they continued and they kept doing things without judging and assessing every step. That's usually the thing that we fall prey to. We tend to assess it and we judge it much more harshly than we would probably judge another person. And you can look back at people again who are like highly successful and famous, that they're known now for the quality of whatever it is that they're producing. But if you go back 10 years, 20 years, whenever they started, even 2 years, you might go, oh my gosh, right? Like that, what they started with was just not at the level that they now are showing up at. But they couldn't get to that new level without starting in that other way, without like releasing their judgment on it, but instead really placing all their attention on where it is that they're going and why it's so exciting to them. Right? So make it personal in that regard. Really make it special for you, not because anybody else says it, but because it's actually something that means something to you. So I hope that's inspired you for the day. Take yourself forward, start taking some actions. If you do need some help and you're like, I feel like I've tried and I'm still like faltering here, I'm not getting very far, feel free to click on the link below and you can work together, whether it's a short time or a longer coaching session package. But yeah, it's something that I love showing how quickly you can shift once you learn how to shift your attention and respond to something completely different than what you've been placing your focus on. Have a fabulous day, and I'll talk to you next time.